And if it's unjust, we are also going against ourselves. Okay, it's quite an elegant way of saying, although this is not approved, we cannot forget that there are persons who are involved in this issue and that they cannot be unjustly discriminated. It's pretty clear as early as 2003 in a document that collects what the church has been teaching. The right advocacy, therefore, is to stay clearly teaching the persons perhaps who don't know what we are advocating or don't know the teachings of Christ in the church, say clearly the immorality of this, limiting for public morality, understanding as well that in advocating it or in pushing for these, in pushing for this, we corrupt so many souls, including our young. Okay, that's the language of the 2003 document. It is signed by the Cardinal Prefect of the name is Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger. Okay, and it is published with John Paul II approving of the document. Okay, legalization of evil is something far different from the toleration of it. One thing is to tolerate, and another is to approve. Okay, that's pretty clear. That's what the church has taught, and it has just summarized, the document has summarized it, simply put. Okay, it gives some reason why this is so. It gives it in 5 steps. Okay, one is to cite right reason. Another is to utilize biological and anthropological claims. And then social effect of approving such union. Okay, and then legally, and then it gives a practical application for the Catholic politician. Okay, first, if we give legal standing, we recognize their convivencia or their living together in elevated marriage. If we give legal standing to them, it will be a failure in a duty to promote and defend marriage. Because when you equate something to another, then you're not differentiating anymore between the two, and what has been exclusively enjoying that privilege won't be a privilege anymore. Okay, so using right reason, we fail to defend and promote marriage by siding to the advocacy of same-sex union as marriage. Another, they cannot procreate, and if ever they can, it will always be against human dignity, as we have studied in the previous class. So biologically, anthropologically, it won't be helpful for man. Socially, there will be a redefinition of marriage necessarily when this thing happens, because marriage won't be anymore for man and woman, male and female. The principles of respect and non-discrimination therefore cannot be invoked if we side with this. Okay. 4th reason, on the legal plane, there are different planes of the same reality, the reasons why it's not good. In the term, or in the realm of law, it is because it is gravely unjust for the common good. Because there are just laws on the family in order to protect personal goods, and this won't help for the good of persons in their long-term development. Okay. Now, what for the politician who is trying to struggle with this Catholicism, who wants to continuously be faithful to his faith? First, especially applicable to our country, is clear opposition to it. I say applicable because this is quite alien to us. Quite alien because neither do we have divorce yet, and many other among the death bills. So we have to express the clear opposition. On another note, it said, and gives way to this, there could be opposition in ways possible. Now, if you are a citizen of the developed world, you may be able to find ways so that some legislations could lessen the harm that was approved already. If there is already such a thing as same-sex marriage, for example, in some states in the United States of America, then as a politician, you could lobby for something that would lessen the harm or slowly win using your advocacy. The same belief, but doing it creatively as a good politician. Okay. As what I mentioned, I consumed the 20 minutes. Perhaps most of you already know. You perhaps have attended some previous doctrine class, or you have heard it from your Catholic friends or your Catholic schooling. But wait, did not Pope Francis just change all this quite recently? You know that October 21, there were so many news in social media, tweets, feeds, posts, messages that were read, taken out of context, that give us an impression that this thing that I explained has been or is slowly changing. Or in other words, it seemed, as many of these reports have stated, that the Pope is asking us to have a different mindset altogether. Okay, that is what we will study now. And before, a pointer, before I will show you a video that explains blow by blow what has happened. It's from America Magazine. It is, you will realize where it's coming from later in the video. But a note before I start that video, don't believe everything that is written about the Holy Father. Unfortunately, he is misquoted. Sometimes his words are used in other contexts. There are also moments when he is mistranslated, and things pertaining to teachings of the Church, teachings of Christ in many centuries, 2 millennia in fact, do not change overnight. Okay, they don't change just like that. Okay, and so a good reminder for us when we find or when we read very interesting things and shocking headlines like that, Pope changes, support civil union, etc. We have to go to the sources. Now, who wrote it? What was the context? What did the Holy Father really say? I'll show you a video because this clip shows you blow by blow what occurred. There's somehow confusion that took place in all this the past 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, it's Colin Dolly. Okay.
Hi, I'm Colleen Dully, host of America Media's Inside the Vatican podcast. Last week, news broke that Pope Francis had said he supported civil unions for same-sex couples as part of an interview featured in a new documentary called Francesco. But almost immediately, people started raising questions about the soundbite. Was it edited? Was it mistranslated? When did he make these comments? Today, we're going to clear up those questions and boil down the story to what you need to know. Let's get to it. First off, what did the Pope actually say? Here's how the quote goes according to the subtitles in the documentary. Homosexual people have the right to be in a family. They are children of God and have a right to a family. Nobody should be thrown out or made miserable over it. What we have to have is a civil union law. That way they are legally covered. I supported that. It seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, thanks to some reporting, we've actually learned that this quote was edited from what Pope Francis originally said. So to help clear this all up, I called up my podcast co-host and America Magazine's veteran Vatican correspondent, Gerard O'Connell, to help answer these questions. So I understand this soundbite was actually a combination of the Pope's responses to 2 different questions, right? So can you walk us through what the questions were?
So here we've got an assembly of 2 partial responses to 2 different questions. The first part of the statement, which says the Pope insisting, and it's in relation to parents and others who have a gay child, gay member in the family. And he is strongly defending this person and saying, this person must not be thrown out of the family. So he's very clear, there must be no isolation. The second part was a question about, when you were Archbishop of Buenos Aires, you took a strong stance against same-sex marriage, gay marriage. And now you seem to be more liberal. Has the Holy Spirit changed you? And Francis' response is, well, the Holy Spirit is active, of course, but he said, let's not speak about gay marriage, because marriage in his vocabulary and understanding of the church is between a man and a woman. But he says, he's always a pope who is very focused on what is the real situation. What is the real situation? People are living in these stable unions, LGBT people, but also other people living in stable unions. They have a right to have their rights recognized by the states. The right to inheritance, for example, the right to health care, the right to education, the right to welfare, a whole kind of gamut of rights. And he's saying there should be a law to protect these people.
So the documentary filmmaker took out the part where Francis restated Catholic teaching on marriage, and he combined the quote about having a right to a family with the quote about civil unions, which does change the context a little bit. But here's what it doesn't change. It doesn't change the substance of what Francis said, which is that gay couples living together in a stable relationship should have protections under the law. Now, there were a couple videos going around online saying that the Pope had been mistranslated, and even claiming that he was enraged about it. This mistranslation idea comes down to how you translate the term convivencia civil. Does it mean civil unions, like the subtitle said, or does it mean something different, more along the lines of civil living together? Now, I'm not a native Spanish speaker, and so to clear this up, I called up Elisabetta Piqué. And full disclosure, Elisabetta is actually married to Jerry, who you just heard from. Elisabetta is from Argentina, she's a Vatican journalist, and she's known Pope Francis for years, so if anybody knows what he means, it's her. And she told me on the phone for a print article that the terms Ley de Unión Civil and Ley de Convivencia Civil are used interchangeably in Argentina. So now there's this question of where the quote came from. Originally, everyone assumed that this interview, where the Pope said he supported civil unions, was shot by the documentary director, Evgeny Afanevsky. Afanevsky even said that to several reporters. But after questions started arising, he started backing off of that. What actually happened was that Afanevsky had a number of sit-down interviews with the Pope, but none of them were taped, and they aren't included in the documentary. Instead of shooting an interview with the Pope, Afanevsky was given access to the Vatican's digital archive, and that's where he pulled the interviews from. So this clip about civil unions actually comes from a 2019 interview that the Pope gave to a Mexican journalist, Valentina Alazraqui. So here's where it gets interesting. As Jason Horowitz reported in the New York Times, the Vatican insisted that the Mexican TV interview be shot with Vatican cameras. They do this a lot so that the Vatican can have final control over the tape, and journalists agree to it because any interview with the Pope is better than none at all. So when the tape from this interview got back from the Vatican to the Mexican TV station, this line about civil unions, along with a whole lot of other content, had been cut. Here's Jerry again.
There was an agreement in advance. The Vatican looked at the text. One, it was too long, so some things were taken out. What they decide to cut out is something that is agreed with the Pope. It's not that somebody takes the scissors, cuts it out, and doesn't tell the Pope.
Got it. So you don't think that Francis was subject to any kind of censoring here? The other thing that I wanted to ask you is why the Vatican hasn't commented on this. You wrote in your article recently, "My years of experience covering the Vatican leads me to conclude that the press office has remained silent only because it knows that this is what the Pope wants." So why would Pope Francis want them to stay silent on this?
He's aware of what has been said. He has chosen silence. The press office, the Vatican media, have chosen not to respond to questions. Now, we've seen this happen 2 or 3 times in this pontificate. We saw it first of all happen during the Synod for the Family. The 4 cardinals came forward with their dubia, doubts. They produced questions which required a yes or no answer. Francis, as Pope, does not see things in those terms, and so refused to play the game that they had created and the rules they had created.
Right, and it seems like in almost all of those cases, there's been this belief on the Pope's part that if you stay silent, the truth will eventually come out.
He wants to take people out of this mode of confrontation and black and white analysis.
So when it comes to the origin of this soundbite, there are a few questions that have been raised and not yet answered. First, for the documentarian, Afanevsky, why did he tell the journalist that the tape was his? For the Vatican, was the release of this footage accidental or was it intentional? Was the line cut because someone didn't want people knowing the Pope had said this, or was it just because it was cut for time? Now, the Vatican hasn't commented on any of this. If they do, we'll write a story and we'll link to it in the description of this video. But a number of people in the Vatican said that this wasn't a big deal because it was old news.